I'm a nurse, 48 years old. People often think nurses spend their whole lives in service, but what they don't see are the years of exhaustion, sacrifice, and quiet resilience that build us. I've spent decades in crowded wards, watching life slip away in one bed and hope bloom in another. That kind of work teaches you two things. First, how fragile life is, and second, how strong you have to be when everything feels like it's crumbling. I was a single mother by the time I turned 26. Amelia, my daughter, was still in diapers when her father walked out on us. He said he wasn't ready to be a family man. I didn't cry in front of him, but I cried enough when he was gone. Those nights, I would hold Amelia tight and whisper promises she was too little to understand, that I would give her everything, that she would never want for love or safety. Even if I had to tear the world apart for her, I worked myself ragged. Night shifts, double shifts, meals skipped, feet aching in cheap shoes. Sometimes sleeping in the hospital break room instead of going home. Every cent I earned went into keeping Amelia clothed, fed, and one day educated enough to chase her own dreams. But fate surprised me. An aunt of mine, a quiet woman with no children of her own, left me her estate when she passed. It wasn't some castle, but the inheritance, investments, property, and savings gave me security I had never known. Combined with my careful savings and smart decisions, I became something I never thought I'd be. A rich woman. It didn't change who I was inside. I still wore my plain nurse's shoes, still came home with sore hands, still knew what it meant to work for every scrap. But it did change how others saw me. Some envied me. Some respected me, and some began to circle like vultures. Amelia grew into the kind of daughter mothers dream of. At 22, she was brilliant, full of life with ambitions to go into medical research. She inherited my drive but not my scars, and I wanted it that way. Her life was supposed to be brighter, smoother. She was my heart, walking around outside my body. And I knew I would fight anyone who tried to harm her. But betrayal, when it comes, doesn't always look like a masked stranger in the dark. Sometimes it wears a familiar smile. For me, betrayal wore the face of Linda. I met Linda in my early nursing years. She was sharp, quick with her wit, and seemed to have a knack for easing the tension of long shifts. We laughed together in the break room, celebrated each other's small victories, shared secrets over lukewarm coffee. She was there when Amelia took her first steps, when I cried over my divorce papers, when I bought my first decent car. Linda wasn't just a friend. She was family, or so I thought. The first cracks showed up so subtly I almost brushed them aside. Linda asked Amelia too many questions about her internship, what company, what projects, who she met. At first I thought she was just showing interest, but then her questions turned toward my inheritance. You must be updating your will, right? She'd joke, eyes glinting in ways that made my stomach uneasy. I laughed it off, but my instincts whispered otherwise. One evening, Amelia came home pale and shaken. "Mom," she said, "a man followed me after work. He asked questions about you, about money." Her voice trembled in a way I hadn't heard since she was a child. My chest tightened. I told her it was probably nothing, but deep inside, alarm bells screamed. Nurses develop a sixth sense about danger. It's part of surviving. In the ER, and my instincts told me someone had put their eyes on us. Days later, something happened that confirmed my fears. Amelia's car brakes failed while she was driving home. She lost control, swerving just in time to avoid colliding with a truck. She crashed into a streetlight instead. Bruised but alive, she called me, voice shaking. When the mechanic inspected the car, his face went pale. These brake lines, they weren't worn. They were cut. I froze. The ground seemed to tilt under me. Someone had tried to kill my daughter. That night, I sat awake in the dark, Amelia asleep in her room. The hum of the fridge in the background, and I asked myself the question I had dreaded. Who wanted her gone? Who wanted me gone? And then the image of Linda flashed in my mind. Her questions, her subtle digs, her introducing Amelia to that man Victor, she had called him. Some investor, she said, Amelia should know. His smile had been too smooth. His eyes too calculating. Dot pieces began to align in my mind. It was her. It had to be her. But suspicion wasn't proof. If I confronted her too soon, she'd bury her tracks. I had to outsmart her. The next day, I invited Linda over for dinner. We drank wine, laughed like old times, but I decided to drop a test. Casually, as though I were making small talk. I said, I've been updating my will lately, making sure Amelia gets everything directly. I want it airtight. For a split second, Linda's mask slipped. Her eyes narrowed, her hands stiffened on the glass, a muscle twitched at her jaw. Then she plastered on a smile. Oh, of course. Amelia deserves everything. You're smart to think ahead, but I had seen it. The crack. The truth leaking through. From that moment, I became the hunter. I installed cameras around the house, trackers in Amelia's car, changed passwords, checked locks twice each night. But more than that, I observed Linda. Every word she said, every glance she stole at Amelia, and then I overheard it. She was on the phone in my kitchen while I pretended to fold laundry in the next room. Her voice low, urgent. Once the girl is out of the way, the money's secured. My hands trembled. My heart pounded. There it was, the betrayal laid bare. That night, I kissed Amelia's forehead as she slept. But inside, a storm brewed. Linda had crossed the line. She had threatened the one person I loved more than life itself. And then came the night that changed everything. Amelia didn't come home. Her phone went dead. Panic clawed at me, but my mind sharpened with a focus I hadn't felt since my ER days. I opened the GPS tracker I had hidden in her car. The dot blinked on the map, an abandoned warehouse near the docks. My stomach twisted. My worst fears had come true. I grabbed my keys and drove, the city lights blurring, my heart hammering like a drum of war. As I approached the docks, the air thick with salt and rust, I saw her car parked outside the warehouse, down inside. Through the cracks of the dusty windows, I caught a glimpse of a chair, and tied to it, Amelia. My knees almost buckled. But I couldn't break. Not now. And then I saw her. Linda, standing in the shadows, arms folded, face as cold as I'd ever seen it. Beside her was Victor, tall, looming, his hand resting casually on a crowbar as though it were an extension of himself. That moment, I realized my best friend wanted my daughter's life, and I would have to use every ounce of my wisdom to stop her. I've seen people die in hospital beds, gasping for air with the faintest hope in their eyes. But nothing prepared me for the sight of my daughter tied to that chair. Her wrists bound, her hair falling loose over her shoulders, her eyes wide and wet with terror. I wanted to run to her, to throw myself at her captors and tear her free. But years of nursing had taught me discipline under chaos. Panic gets people killed. Control saves lives. I ducked back behind the rusted metal siding of the warehouse, pressing a hand against the cold surface to steady my trembling. My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to betray me with its sound. I needed a plan. Rushing in blindly would make me another victim. And then I remembered the app. Weeks ago, after Amelia's brakes were cut, I installed a panic app on her phone. It sent her location directly to the police with one tap. But with her phone confiscated or destroyed, she couldn't use it. Still, I could. My own phone buzzed in my pocket like a lifeline. My fingers moved quickly, sending Amelia's location to the authorities. My mind racing the whole time. Please, God, let them get here before it's too late. I peered through the crack again. Linda's voice carried in the empty space. You think your mother can protect you forever? She spat, pacing in front of Amelia like a predator circling prey. You don't deserve what she's leaving you. You haven't earned it. Amelia's voice cracked, but there was fire in it too. She worked for everything she has. You don't know what she sacrificed. Linda's face twisted, and for a moment I saw not my friend but a stranger filled with venom. Sacrifice. Don't lecture me about sacrifice, little girl. I gave up my youth in those wards too. And what did I get? Nothing. No inheritance. No beautiful home. No perfect daughter. Just empty nights and bills piling up. Your mother stole the life I should have had. Her words hit me like shards of glass. So that was it. Jealousy had grown inside her like a cancer. Until it hollowed her out and turned her into this. Victor leaned close to Amelia, his shadow falling over her like a shroud. We don't have time for your speeches, Linda. End this, get the money, and we're gone. My breath caught. He lifted the crowbar. My body moved before my mind could argue. I kicked the door open, the metal clanging against the wall with a sound that echoed like thunder. Step away from her, I shouted, my voice strong, steady. The same voice I had used to command chaos in the ER. They both froze, surprise flashing in their eyes. For a heartbeat, the world hung still. And then Linda laughed, sharp and bitter. Well, look who finally showed up. Did you think you'd swoop in here and play the hero, Evelyn? Not play, I said. My eyes locked on hers. I am the hero. And you? You're nothing but a coward hiding behind a borrowed crowbar and a stolen dream. Victor snarled and stepped forward. But the sound of sirens cut through the night. Red and blue lights flashed against the warehouse walls. My chest flooded with relief so strong it nearly knocked me to my knees. The police were here. Chaos erupted. Victor bolted for the back door. Officers stormed in, guns drawn, shouting commands. Linda's face twisted from anger to fear, then back to defiance. She screamed my name like I was the one betraying her as the handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. Amelia sobbed when I untied her, clinging to me with the strength of a drowning child pulling at their lifeline. Mom, she cried, I thought I'd never see you again. You'll always see me. I whispered fiercely into her hair, I'll always be here. For a moment, I thought it was over. But betrayal doesn't end neatly with flashing lights and arrests. Sometimes it digs in deeper, finds new ways to wound you. In the days that followed, I noticed Amelia withdrawing. She would sit in her room for hours, staring at nothing, her laughter gone. When I tried to talk to her, she snapped, I'm not a child. Mom, you can't protect me from everything. It stung, but I knew it was the fear speaking. She was shaken to her core, and in her mind, maybe she blamed me for trusting Linda in the first place. That guilt gnawed at me in the quiet hours of the night. I needed something to keep myself from breaking. That's when I rediscovered painting. I hadn't touched a brush in decades, not since before Amelia was born. But one afternoon when the silence of the house became unbearable, I dug out an old set of oils and a blank canvas. At first my hand shook too much to draw a line. But then, slowly, colors began to spread. Dark strokes of grief, sharp reds of anger, soft blues of resilience. The canvas became a mirror of my storm, and with every brushstroke, I felt some of the weight lift. But as I painted, I also planned. Linda was in custody, but Victor had vanished into the night. And a voice inside me whispered that the danger wasn't over. I started digging, using the same meticulous skills I used to track patient charts. I combed through Linda's past, her finances, her connections. What I found made my blood run cold. Linda and Victor had been planning this for months. Fake accounts, hidden messages, even contacts in the city who had promised them help. And then, like salt in an open wound, came the letter. It arrived one morning, slipped under my door with no return address. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, scrawled with messy handwriting. You think you've won, Evelyn? But this isn't over. You took everything from me. Now I'll take everything from you. Watch your daughter carefully, because next time I won't miss. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands, bile rising in my throat. Linda might be behind bars, but her reach wasn't. Someone else was still out there, watching, waiting. That night, I locked every door, checked every window twice, and slept with the letter under my pillow like a curse I couldn't shake. Amelia begged me to stop hovering, but I couldn't. I knew danger was still circling us, and I was right. 2 weeks later, Amelia disappeared again. This time, her car was found abandoned on a quiet country road. The driver's side door left open, her purse on the seat, no note. No call, no message, Just the hollow silence of betrayal tightening its grip again. And that was when I realized, to save my daughter, I would have to confront not just Linda, but every shadow she had ever invited into our lives. When Amelia's car was found abandoned on that lonely country road, my world shattered for the second time. The sight of her purse sitting on the passenger seat. Her phone tossed carelessly like an afterthought, it was a deliberate message. Someone wanted me to know they had her. Someone wanted me to drown in fear. I pressed my trembling hands against the steering wheel, staring at the empty space where my daughter should have been. The air smelled of dust and pine sap, but to me it reeked of danger. My chest tightened, my thoughts spinning back to that letter. Next time, I won't miss. I wanted to collapse right there on the roadside, but I didn't. Years of standing beside deathbeds had taught me one thing: grief can wait. Survival cannot. So I steadied my breathing, pulled my phone from my bag, and called the detective assigned to Linda's case. Detective Marlowe was a retired officer, brought back as a consultant, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who didn't waste words. When I explained what had happened, he said, "Stay put. I'll be there in 10. But 10 minutes felt like 10 hours. I walked the perimeter of Amelia's car, searching for any clue, any scrap of evidence. And then I saw it. A trail of footprints, faint but visible in the dirt leading into the woods. 2 sets, one Amelia's, one larger, heavier. My heart stuttered, then steadied again. I wasn't helpless. Not now. I pulled my phone's flashlight on and began to follow. The woods closed in around me, the air growing damp, every rustle making my nerves jump. My nurse's training whispered inside my head, observe, record, adapt. That mantra had saved countless patients, and now it would save my daughter. After 10 minutes of walking, I found it. A scrap of Amelia's scarf caught on a branch. My knees weakened, but I clutched the fabric to my chest and whispered, "Hold on, baby. I'm coming." A branch snapped behind me. I spun around, light cutting through the darkness. A man's shadow shifted in the trees. My blood went ice cold. But before I could speak, a voice said quietly, "Mrs. Walker." It was Detective Marlowe. Relief nearly buckled my legs. He'd followed me in. He crouched low, examining the footprints. "You did good," he muttered. "But this trail doesn't end well." Together, we followed the path until it led to an old hunting cabin. Smoke curled faintly from its chimney. A bad sign. Someone was inside. Marlowe touched my arm. "You wait here." "I'll go in." "No," I whispered fiercely. "That's my daughter in there. I'm going with you." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Stay behind me." We crept up to the cabin. Through a crack in the boarded window, I saw her. Amelia alive. She sat tied to a chair, her face pale, but her eyes alert. And standing over her, grinning like the devil himself, was Victor. My heart crashed against my ribs. He hadn't disappeared. He'd been waiting. Marlowe raised his gun, motioning for me to stay quiet. But then from the back of the cabin, another figure stepped into view. Linda, my breath hitched so hard it burned. She was supposed to be locked up. How the hell was she here? She looked different, thinner, sharper, her hair pulled back like a crown of thorns. But her voice was the same venom I remembered. "You see, Amelia, your mother isn't as smart as she thinks. She thought bars could keep me in. But she doesn't know the favors I'm owed." Amelia's lips parted. Letna slapped her across the face, the sound echoing like a whip. My blood boiled. Marlowe leaned close and whispered, "We can't take them both in a fight. We need backup." But I shook my head. Backup would take too long. Amelia didn't have time. That's when I remembered what I carried in my bag. A vial of medical sedative left over from a home visit I'd been doing for a hospice patient. Most women carried lipstick in their purse. I carried a syringe. I squeezed Marlowe's arm. "Give me 30 seconds, I whispered. Before he could argue, slipped to the side of the cabin, found the loose back door, and crept inside. The air smelled of smoke and rot. Linda's voice carried, sharp and mocking. "Your mother has always thought she could fix everything. But some wounds don't heal. Some rot goes all the way through. Her words cut, but I steadied my breathing. Focus, Evelyn. I crept behind Victor, my footsteps as quiet as prayer. And then with one swift movement, I drove the syringe into his arm. He spun, roaring, but the drug worked fast. His eyes rolled back, his knees buckled, and he collapsed like a felled tree. Linda shrieked, her eyes wild. She grabbed a knife from the table, pointing it at Amelia's throat. "No closer." She screamed. I froze. For the first time, real fear showed in Linda's eyes. Not because she was caught, but because she was cornered. "Put it down." "Linda," I said softly, my voice calm, the same tone I used for delirious patience. "This isn't who you are." She laughed, bitter and broken. "You don't know who I am, Evelyn. I'm the shadow you never saw growing behind you. I'm the proof that your kindness makes you blind. For a long moment. It was just the three of us, me, my daughter, and the woman who had once been my best friend, now holding a knife to the person I loved most. And then the door burst open. Marlowe and two officers stormed in, weapons raised. Linda screamed, lunging toward Amelia. But I moved first. I threw myself forward, grabbing her wrist, twisting it with all the strength left in me. The knife clattered to the floor. She shrieked as the officers wrestled her to the ground, cuffs snapping around her wrists. Amelia sobbed as I pulled her free. "Mom," she whispered, her voice shaking. "How did you know what to do?" I kissed her forehead, tears burning my eyes. "Because I've spent my whole life saving people. And I'll never stop saving you." For a moment, all I felt was relief. But then a chill slid down my spine. Because in Linda's eyes, even as she was dragged away, there was no defeat. Only hatred. Only a promise that this wasn't over. And she was right. When Linda was dragged away from that cabin, hissing like a feral animal, I thought it was over. I thought Amelia was safe. But I should have known better. People like Linda don't accept defeat. They plot around it. Like water slipping through cracks in stone. 2 weeks later, sat in the county courthouse, my heart pounding against my ribs. Linda had been formally charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. Victor remained in custody, drugged, shackled, and silent. And Amelia sat beside me, her hand in mine, her face still pale, but her eyes carrying that fierce determination she'd inherited from me. But Linda, she was radiant. That was the first thing I noticed when they brought her in. She wore a crisp navy suit, her hair styled neatly. No trace of the woman who'd snarled at me with a knife in her hand. She looked like someone's beloved aunt. Someone respectable. And she smiled at the jury as though she were the victim. When the judge asked for her plea, Linda's voice rang clear. "Not guilty, Your Honor. I was framed." The words sliced through the room like glass. Murmurs rippled through the gallery, and then her eyes found mine. Her smile widened. She wasn't just defending herself. She was turning the blade back on me, her attorney. A slick man with a grin too white to be honest, wasted no time spinning lies. He painted me as a paranoid, unstable widow. Claimed the sedative I used on Victor proved I carried dangerous drugs without cause. He suggested I stage the kidnapping to frame Linda out of jealousy. To keep Amelia isolated from her, every word made me want to leap out of my seat and scream. But I didn't. I sat tall. I let him twist the rope tighter around his own neck. Because I knew something Linda did in truth has a way of waiting in silence until the right moment, when it was my turn. To take the stand, I told everything. My years as a nurse, the late-night whispers of patients who taught me how to read fear in eyes, how to tell a lie from desperation. I described the brake tampering, the threats, the night at the cabin. My voice didn't shake once, and then the defense had their turn. Linda leaned forward, her voice dripping with sorrow. Evelyn has always been fragile. After her husband passed, she grew paranoid. She accused neighbors, even me, of plotting against her. But I loved her. I wanted to help her. And now she's destroying me. For a moment, I felt the jury waver. A woman in her 60s speaking softly. With tears in her eyes, it was a powerful mask. But masks crack. The prosecution called their surprise witness. Claire, my breath caught. Claren, old colleague from the hospital, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. We'd fallen out after a bitter disagreement over a patient's treatment. I never expected her to appear here now. But when she stepped onto that stand, her voice was steady as stone. She revealed she'd overheard Linda months ago bragging to Victor about Evelyn's inheritance. She recounted how Linda had once tried to recruit her into this scheme, offering a share if she helped isolate me. The courtroom fell silent, and then came the nail in the coffin. Recorded phone calls. Victor's voice, Linda's voice, planning, threatening, laughing about Amelia's car brakes. The jury listened, their expressions hardening with every word. When the defense tried to object, the judge cut him off. The evidence was clear. Linda's mask finally slipped. She erupted, screaming across the courtroom, she doesn't deserve it. She's had everything handed to her house, her money, her precious daughter. And me. I gave my whole life to scraps. Why should she live while I rot? Her words echoed like a confession, raw and naked. The bailiffs rushed forward as she fought, but it was too late. Her true self was on full display. The jury took less than an hour to return with the verdict. Guilty. On all counts. The relief that poured through me was like water after a drought. Amelia sobbed quietly, clutching my hand. And for the first time in months, I felt the weight lift off my chest. But Linda had one more act left in her, as they dragged her away. She spat the words at me like poison. This isn't the end, Evelyn. You may have one today, but Mark, Mule, die alone. And when you do, no one will remember you. I didn't flinch. I stood tall and let her words scatter like ashes, because I knew she was wrong. Weeks later, Amelia and I sat in our kitchen, sunlight spilling across the table. She was laughing, again really laughing, for the first time since it all began. She'd enrolled back into her graduate program, determined to use her experience to research trauma recovery for young women. And me. I found a new calling, with the settlement from the trial and my savings. I founded a mentorship program for young nurses and single mothers, a safe place where women could find guidance, resources, and strength. I poured my pain into building something that would outlast betrayal. One evening, as I painted something I'd taken up again during the chaos, I thought of Linda's words. You'll die alone. But when Amelia came in, kissed my cheek, and told me she was proud of me, I knew Linda was wrong. I wasn't alone. I never would be. I turned my betrayal into triumph. And if there's one thing I want anyone listening to my story to know, it's this. Never underestimate the strength of a woman who has been betrayed. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also sharpens. And sometimes it forges a blade strong enough to cut down every shadow. So, to those watching, if you've faced betrayal, if someone's tried to tear you apart, share your story in the comments. Let the world hear your voice. And don't forget to subscribe, because women's stories deserve to be told. This was mine, and I promise it won't be the last.